Our project is called Duplicates, Digital Thrifts, and Other Hauntological Fragments. I'm Riley.
And I'm Brianna.
Our work explores the possibilities and limitations of disembodied ethnographic methods and fragmented reconstruction in order to produce a nuanced understanding of architectural context in places we have never been but dream of going to. Rivers and the relationship of people to bodies of water have served as an alibi for our investigation. Water as a resource is equal parts a life source and instigator of conflict. Appropriately, our investigation starts with the exploration of upriver and downriver tensions, as well as the conflicts they sponsor through the weaponization and instrumentalization of water. From an initial global analysis, our research focused on the Tigris and Euphrates Rivers, allowing us to understand how geopolitical tension plays out on a regional scale.
The floating communities of Iraq's southern marshes were once referred to as the Garden of Eden. The water sustains life through fishing, farming, buffalo herding, and building with reeds. Today, the Arabian inhabitants of Mesopotamian marshlands face an ecocide as the water has been used as a trigger, weapon, and casualty, impacting people and the environment in equal measure. Water triggers tensions as Turkey and Iran's dam projects threaten the already limited river access to the marshes, leading to rising tensions among neighboring countries. It was also used as a weapon during Saddam Hussein's reign, with the construction of a third river diverting water away from the marshes and destroying the livelihood of Shia Muslims. The disappearance of water in the marshlands led to a loss of culture, architecture, and way of life for the Arabian inhabitants, worsened by unregulated chemical dumping during the U.S. occupation and ongoing pollution from untreated sewage and pollutants in the Tigris and Euphrates Rivers. We have studied the impacts of the water crisis on culture, economy, and ecology. A young girl gathers scarce reeds, once plentiful and now a form of currency in the Al-Chabaish district. Mazouf is used to transport fresh water to buffalo due to water scarcity. A boy stands near a dried-up marshland bank. The marshland landscape is being museumified by those seeking authentic experiences. This trend highlights the impact of water scarcity on both tangible and intangible cultural practices in the region, including reed construction, food, songs, poetry, and horticulture. The exact number of people displaced from the marshlands to Baghdad is unknown, but interviews suggest a significant population. Our project poses questions such as, what are the ethical conundrums of speculative cultural reconstruction? Can cultural outsiders produce self-reflexively positioned analytical value in contexts outside of their direct experience? What are the capacities and limitations of distanced and speculative design practice in collaboration with local experts? What level of engagement authenticates a proposal? What is the value of critical cultural conservation as a design tool and methodology? Our project focuses on the culture of place, which has required a disembodied fieldwork in the form of interviews, poetry, literature, documentary film, and photography, as well as journalism and a process we have affectionately titled digital thrifting.
What is digital thrifting? Google Earth is a widely used GIS software that enables users to explore streets, homes, and stores in Baghdad and the southern Iraq marshes through uploaded videos, photography, and data. As thrifters of Google Earth, we collect objects, textures, colors, architectures, and signs of life from these areas. Of course, all of that put together is but a fragment. An architect's analysis of context is always already incomplete.
The project offers two parallel interventions which hybridize ecological and architectural concerns into novel rural and urban environments, designed to sustain marshland culture. Mirroring practices in two radically divergent contexts, the work is intended to create empathy and new knowledge around indigenous ways of living. In the process, we conserve cultural heritage and lifestyle that are at risk of erasure. 281.5 miles exist between the Southern Marshes of Iraq and the Sadr City District in Baghdad. The Southern Marshes of Iraq are wetlands home to 40,000 people, which is 16% of the population that lived there in 1988, and makes up 7,722 square miles. The Sadr City District in Baghdad is home to 1.15 million people and is 5 square miles. In addition to ecological calamity, the marshes are also, ironically or paradoxically, experiencing an influx of tourism. Our intervention attempts to capitalize on ecotourism while limiting its impacts on the actual population.
On the eco-bubble island, we have designed a holistic cultural ecology that combines architectural remnants with a temperature to environment level of humidity, creating a perfected scenographic ecology which samples from a breadth of beloved natural environments throughout Iraq and puts them into close and exaggerated proximity with the visitor. In this, we are using native date palm trees and Iraq's national flower, Rosa Persia. Transported fragments of the ruins of the Hatra temple, which was demolished by Islamic State militants, sit on the island. The fans control a 75 degrees environment, which was the median temperature during a summer in the marshes before climate change effects. As we move away from the first sequence, a can is tied to a reed, serving as a street sign leading us towards the culinary island, a demonstration and participation of native food cycles.
Also approached by Mazouf, we begin to hear the music of Qadim al-Sahar on the radio as we witness a space for lessons and the production of reed weaving. Near a fishing net sits a car battery for electrocuting the scarce fish population. Containers of fresh water hydrate the tourists, and a buffalo drinks from a mazouf of fresh water transported from land. After a day of weaving, bread making, fishing, and interacting with the buffalo, the tourists sit down for a dinner consuming the fresh bread, fish, buffalo cream, and sesame oil, which serves as an authentic meal of the marshes. The tourists are participants in witnessing and producing the crafts and the meals. It requires a certain amount of effort in order to bring back the basic elements of life that were once germane and natural here. Once native ecology now needs an enormous amount of labor to reconstruct its former ethos in order to attract the attention of the authenticity hunting tourists.
The Mazouf approaches the conditioned reeds island, a dissonance between the reality of Mazouf habitation and the desire for authentic tourist experience is mediated by a conditioned lodging environment that camouflages fundamental systems. Where normative reed architecture assumes people will sleep directly in contact with the ground and the reed floors, natural fiber and responsive loose mattresses have been inserted into a lowered datum profile to match the ground plane but create comfort. A double skin camouflages conditioning systems that ensure the interior of the marhif is consistently 71 degrees with zero humidity. This assemblage diagram describes the camouflaging systems. Lighting and steel portal frames are hidden. Glazing covered by woven panels and wire mesh under the floor protect from pests and insects. We are working in the marshlands in order to create scenographic constructs that sensitize outsiders to the cultural quality of place, while simultaneously artificializing the experience in order to make it more adaptable to high-end users.
Culturally calibrated environments insert into urban conditions for migrants to find spaces for self-expression and cultural conservation. In this intervention, we are acting on an existing building in the Sadr City District of Baghdad. In this space, we imagine large communities of Arabian inhabitants of the Mesopotamian marshlands displaced. We are working within Baghdad to bring some of their quality of life into a denser condition, a hybridization of the rural and urban Iraq. Integrating the urban morphologies of Baghdad with the landscape phenomena of the marshlands creates a new residential typology integrated with spaces of production, commerce, and cultural conservation. Commercial intrigue, residential domestic space, stacked landscape and vegetation, borrowed from the marshlands, and cultural production creates a new urban whole.
We are practicing an intentional hybrid vernacular aesthetic agnosticism, embracing hybridity of the urban and rural, selling of reed crafts, Iraqi pop culture t-shirts, TVs, pop, reeds, bread, coffee pots, and grills take place.
Concrete slabs that once served as barriers between the conflict of the siege of Sadr City from 2004 to 2008 are now situated to grow reeds in their cracks, holding puddles within their craters. The layout of the apartments is inspired by our conversation with a fellow Pir Noor, who lived in Baghdad with her family until she was 8 years old. We sat down and watched her reimagining her childhood Baghdad home as she sketched a floor plan and described each room's spatial activities. The slippers, scattered books, and frozen TV leave traces of habitation. We learned Baghdad is dealing with less space and more density, leading us to incorporate inflated reed structures that protrude from the facades, providing more space as the building grows vertically. Another Qadim al-Sahir song plays on the TV.
Also, to address Baghdad's increasing density, we worked towards adapting traditional Baghdad homes and their outdoor spaces to vertical urban ways of living. As we walked around the city of Baghdad in Google Earth, we noticed how symbols of the marshes and their history are scattered throughout the city. We discovered a mural from a local Baghdad school that depicted a woman in a mazouf along the marshes. This is the space where weaving and technical knowledge of the reeds is kept alive through the act of making and crafting. The structure for drying reeds grown on site borrows techniques from tobacco barns to adapt reed drying to the urban environment. Reflective surfaces bounce sunlight within the drying environment and create the illusion of continuous reeds.
Diligently rendering explicitly the distance between the designer and the cultural context actually offers opportunities for criticality and a productive outside gaze, as long as we render explicit the impossibility of getting an original, authentic solution. Because there's no way to survey an entire community, our approach is always already fragmented and partial. But even when we work within a material, authentic context, the people we talk to only create a partial portrait. So perhaps in this way, it is more honest about the limitations of architecture to represent the interests of an entire community. The value of critical cultural conservation as a design tool methodology motivates us to abandon aesthetic trend and lean in a forthright way into visual research. Aesthetic questions do not precede us, they do not formulate the outcomes. We would imagine by taking on a critical cultural conservation stance, every project we work on would terminate in a completely different series of outcomes, where the aesthetics don't dominate. We have learned to value vernacular and cultural scenarios as they produce really surprising outcomes.